Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the first development log of my new project, Marooned. This is a project that I've been developing for the past couple months, and part of the game that I've been showcasing a lot on my YouTube channel lately. And today, I'm going to be taking you along, showing you how I made the game, as well as showing you the tricks and the processes that some of the RPG developers, as well as I've used to create these large-scale projects. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so before we talk about the creation of all the cool game mechanics, I needed to make sure that the core framework of the game was in place. I wanted to make sure that everything was organized so that I and any other future developers don't end up with a huge headache 6 months down the line. To do this, I decided to build the game using OOP, or Object-Oriented Programming. Now, for those who don't know, and I know it's not really common anymore in the Roblox space, Object-Oriented Programming is basically a style where you create classes or objects. Think of these as templates. For example, instead of writing a whole movement script just for the player and just for the enemy AI, I created a movement class. So now I can take the exact template and plug it into literally anything, like an enemy AI, without rewriting a single line of code. It speeds up development heavily and keeps the Explorer window looking clean instead of like a junk drawer. Alright, so with the framework of the game finished, it was time to move on to the core mechanics, starting with the movement basics. Sprinting was a simple toggle, changing the movement speed and toggling an animation, but crouching was a little bit more complicated. I set up an isCrouching variable, boolean, to track the player's posture. I also didn't want the animations to look janky, so I added in a connection to check if the player was moving. If they were, it would play a crouch walk animation, but if they didn't, or they stopped, it would switch to a crouch idle. This makes the crouch look smooth, so that the player doesn't stand in place while they're moving and crouching simultaneously. But when you stand back up, the logic would also disconnect, just so the game would run smoothly and to prevent any memory leaks. Alright, so next on the docket was sliding, and this is where I hit the first real bug of the game. I used a body velocity to give the player an initial burst of speed from most games, but I forgot one major thing: the physics and the friction of the sliding. My character would just slide forever, like they were on some weird sheet of infinite ice. So to fix this, I used a basic for-i loop that would slowly decrease the velocity over time in a certain increment. This took a little bit of fine-tuning and took a little while of debugging, but the slide finally felt heavy to where it would come to a natural stop after a while. I then moved on to the advanced part of the movement system, being vaulting and climbing, and this is where the movement started to really come together. I used raycasting to detect if the object was directly in front of the player, and to send that data back to the server. For vaulting, if the ray hits a ledge, the game would use tweening and lerping to physically move the character over the object while playing the specified animation. For climbing, I used the same raycast logic, but I instead added a line orientation to keep the player facing the wall, as well as a body velocity to physically pull them up. Alright, so with all this out of the way, the final piece of the puzzle was wall running. This was easily the most complex part of the movement system. I had to write logic that checks which side the player was touching the wall, so the game would know whether to play the left run or the right run animation, as well as the left hop or the right hop animation. I spent about 2 hours just debugging the horizontal movement so the player wouldn't slide off the wall or go flying into the sky. So before I show you the final product, I thought I might as well let you know a couple of things, since I did a bit of off-camera scripting to polish the system and to update the system, as well as adding in a couple features, like directional dashing, which will make the adding combat part easier, as well as fall damage, and rolling to negate fall damage, which will make falling in the game more consequential. But with these small details out of the way, let's get to the showcase. And with that, this marks the end of the first development log of Marooned. In the next development log, I will aim to showcase the combat, as well as the details surrounding it, and maybe the enemy AI as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you would like to see. Bye!